Today we're going to talk to everybody out there that is in a management role, and specifically people that are new to that role, people that are new to a management role with a new company, or people that have been in a management role for a while and just never really felt comfortable doing that. So those are the folks we're going to talk about, and what we're really going to be letting them know is there are 5 disciplines that will make you a more effective manager, and we're going to let them know exactly how to do that. Here's the premise of the show today. In a lot of management roles, there's a substantial amount of things that people do, which I call tactical activities. They're tasks. You're doing reports,
Sure.
You're following up on projects, you're checking in with employees that are doing certain things, you're talking to the guy that you report to. That's all tactical in nature.
Or the gal that you report to.
Or the gal that you report to. That's happening quite a bit today as well.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is not that stuff. I'm going to be talking about the stuff that actually makes you more influential, more effective, makes you a better value to the company. And it's what I call the strategic side of managing, not the tactical side. And there's 5 things that I've identified that if you can incorporate those and run them parallel to your daily activities, you can up the value of who you are as a manager in that company, not only to the people that employ you, but to the team that reports to you.
Okay, even I want to hear this show. So let's dig in. Where do you want to start?
Okay, let's start with some of the things that cause managers to not act more influential and effective. Okay, and one of the biggest ones I run into, and it's with people that start out, they get promoted from an employee status up to a supervisor or department manager, team manager, something of that nature.
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that happens is they don't stop thinking like an employee. They're continuing to think about me and what I'm doing and what I produce and what value I bring.
So I hear you saying they're not really taking on a leadership role.
No, they're not thinking about a team or a group of people that they now have to guide and direct and provide, feedback and all that other kind of stuff to help the team. It's kind of like, have you ever been a coach for a Little League team?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
yes.
So that's a great example. Probably a lot of people listening to us have done this.
Yes.
And you're out there, you got a bunch of kids that, they've got their uniforms on, they're going through some basic drills, and what happens when they get out on the field?
Well, I usually look around to see who's going to do what next.
Yeah, and then when the ball gets on the field with them, it's this massive cluster of kids just trying to kick the ball. They go back to the essence of what they know how to do. They want to have fun. They're not thinking strategy. They're not thinking about winning a soccer game or a Little League, a T-ball game. They're just out there swinging and hitting and running and doing what they like to do.
Yeah.
So as a manager, you got to figure out how to coordinate them so all of their individual activities produce a team result. And what I find with a lot of people who haven't really instilled great management techniques and values and insight is they're not thinking that way. They're still thinking about, what am I doing today?
Well, the old saying of lead, follow, or get out of the way comes into play here.
Well, and so if you're the kind that opts for getting out of the way a lot of times, that could be because you're really, really good at delegating and providing good communication, or it could be that you're so insecure that you'd rather just stay in the background and let everything kind of unfold as it's going to.
I get it. So I hear you saying that thinking like a manager is more advantageous than continuing to think like an employee.
Yes.
Where do you go from there?
Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, the other thing that is really, really difficult for people to get their arms around is thinking about the development of the team they're responsible for. Okay, so here's a couple things that typically happen. You get a new manager coming into the company. He's learning the company, the orientation, the culture, who does what. And so at some point, 6 months down the road, you figure, okay, he or she has gotten their arms around their job, and they're now fully, a functioning manager leading the team. Okay, We hope. And a lot of times what I find is that they're not really looking at how they can continue to develop all the players so the team operates better. They're standing back saying, well, we hired good people. They know what to do. That's a very pat
Wish it were that simple.
Yeah, but it's never that simple because people can always improve what they do, how they do it, and with whom they do it. And there has to be somebody quarterbacking that whole process, and that's the manager. If the manager doesn't have their eyes on how everybody's playing the game in their own position, dysfunction is going to arrive to the surface at some point. So they have to be thinking development of the team in order to get the most out of the people they're responsible for.
And it's important to remember the Peter principle. And do you know what that is, Captain
Oh,
Smith?
yeah. Everybody at some point rises to the level of their own incompetence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or they get promoted to it.
Or they get promoted to it. Here's the problem with that. Peter Principle is what I call a blind spot. Because you, as the person being inflicted with Peter's principle, you don't see it.
Oh, no, you never do.
No, it's the people who report to you and the people above you that end up at some point realizing that you've gone too far. You don't see that.
Well, as the old saying goes, you get hired from the top down, you get fired from the bottom.
That's good. I've never heard of that, but that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the last one. Understand what's really important in your role as a manager. And here's where I'm going to get into the 5 strategies that really talks to this element. Because, like I said in the starting of this program, people tend to want to devolve into task-related activity. That's how their day is laid out, okay? Yep. But once you understand what really drives the effectiveness of the role you're sitting in, you're going to find out that you're spending way too much time on unproductive stuff.
Oh, yeah. My to-do list is more important than my get-done list.
Yes, absolutely. That's a perfect way to say it.
Yeah. Your talking points are good. Think like a manager, not so much like an employee.
Yes.
Focus on making the team the best they can be.
Yes.
Think team leadership.
Yes.
Not just team participation.
Absolutely.
All right. And then third, understand what's really important to your role as a manager. And I like to use the word leader because you can't manage people, but you can lead them.
Yes, and you know what's funny today is that role of having some authority and responsibility for getting some aspect of the company done.
Yeah.
It has 2 components to it. You know, you lead your people, you manage your processes.
Precisely, and I'm glad you said that.
Here's the strategic tips to really be aware of. So if anybody's listening to this right now, and I know a lot of people do because we watch our stats and we know exactly how many people tune into the show every week and listen to this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you're
folks,
be
we
writing
can tell.
this down.
We can tell if you brushed your teeth or not, or
right.
if you just ran the flush out of the water.
That's right. Google Analytics knows more than you'll ever imagine. Okay, so number 1, be in the know about related areas of the company. So you can't, I mean, you can, a lot of people do, they don't realize they're doing it, but you can't operate in a silo. So here's an example. Let's say you are running the finance department for an e-commerce company.
Okay.
And you've got problems with people paying, with credit cards, going bad, with stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you've got to be able to talk to other people in the company that are related to what you do. You've got to know the folks that are on the tech side of the website.
Yes.
You've got to know people that have an effect on what you're trying to clean up, so that you can talk to other people and help to get kind of support and resolution that might be outside the bounds for what your individual people are doing.
So it's critical. Be in the know about related areas of the company. So many times managers like to think that their management has a perimeter. I work in this box right here, and everything outside this box is not in my pay grade.
Yes. In fact, the last company that I worked for before I started this business coaching company, had their entire organization was based on their ability to deliver product in a very, very quick period of time. This was way before Amazon came out.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things we found at some point was anytime you had a customer product quality problem, you had to get sales involved, you had to get logistics involved, you had to get manufacturing involved. And many times those 3 weren't talking to each other on a regular enough basis that they could diagnose the problem quickly and satisfy the customer's need quickly. So we had all these big conference call meetings and meetings on site, and there was just a lot of activity that didn't produce quick results because there wasn't that natural desire to be talking to people on a regular basis about what's going on in your backyard.
And in business, we call that collaborative communication.
Yes.
That's where more than one person needs to know what's going on. Okay, so be in the know about related areas of your company. What's number 2?
Number 2 is know how to access resources that your team needs. So there's going to be times when people in your team will come to you and say, look, I'd love to be able to do what you're asking for, but we don't have X, Y, or Z. And you're going to sit there and you're going to let it go and you're going to let it fester. And at some point you're going to go to your boss and say, hey, I can't do this because we don't have X, Y, or Z. The better alternative is to go to the department that has X, Y, and Z and figure out how to get it.
Exactly. And by the way, a good military person learns that.
Yes.
They learn how to get what they need and what they want.
It's almost like learning early what are the pitfalls of your organization, of the organization that you work within, so you know who to go to get things done quickly. Because if you can bring back solutions that remove that barrier of your people not doing their job, now all of a sudden they have nothing left but to do the job. And if it really gets rid of a problem and makes their day easier to get through, they're going to love you for it.
So the key issue on this message, number 2, is know how to access resources that the team needs. It's not that you have to invent them. You have to find them and bring them.
And what are resources that companies typically provide that not everybody takes advantage of? Sometimes it's budgets. Sometimes it's money that's floating around in the corporate budget.
But it's not always money.
It's not always money.
A lot of times it's intellect. It's the people on board the company that have the knowledge or experience.
Right. It's other people's experience. It could be hardware. People in certain departments could be working with really dated hardware, and they just need somebody to go to the tech department and say, look, we need some upgrades. Yeah. And they can help you get that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different things that constitute resources that if you just know who controls them, what they need from you to get them, and you know what you need to make your team operate better, that's the kind of conduit activity that really helps boost productivity.
I agree. Okay, so we've got number 1 and 2 on tips for improving and overcoming the problem. What's number 3?
Okay, number 3 is be willing and able to make decisions.
Whoa.
Now, in every...
Easier said than done.
Well, sure. In every management layer, there is a kind of a written down and a perceived level of authority with which you have to make decisions. But the people that are not confident in their management ability, they don't really know what's going on around them, they don't know what to focus on, they tend to back away from making any kind of hard decisions for fear of reprisals from folks above.
Or folks below. One of the things that you make such a good point about is be willing to make the decision.
Yes.
You may be able, but if you're unwilling to make the decision because you're concerned of pushback either from people behind you or people in front of you.
Yes.
And by the way, I give equal weight to both of those crowds.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I said, you get hired from the top down, you get fired from the bottom up. So if you're trying to please everybody all the time, you're not going to make the best decisions in the interest of the team or the company.
Right. And decision-making by its very nature requires practice to get good at.
I agree with you. You've got to learn to say no to some things and yes to others.
Right. Now, here's the other thing, and I teach a class on this entire thing that we're talking about. It takes almost a day to do this. But one of the things...
Tough class.
It's a tough class. But, we get into a lot of the depth of this so people can walk out saying, okay, I understand what that means to me. One of the things about making decisions, you have to own it. You can't make a decision and tell everybody else that you did it because somebody down the hall told you how to do it. Yeah, you're giving away all your authority when you do that. You take a decision, figure out why it's right for your team, you make the decision, you run with it, you accept the consequences, good or bad, that comes from it. But don't be somebody else's mouthpiece.
No, you got that so right. And that leads us into number 4, which really addresses that.
Yes. Have the courage to address tough situations.
Yeah, and do it quickly.
One of the ones that I'll never forget, and it was the third company I was with, we had a guy on our team who had a smaller market, and it was out in a very geographically isolated area of the western United States. And because he didn't get much play, because he didn't have huge customers that were on the radar screen, he was always looked at as somebody who just was kind of an average player, didn't really offer much. He was just a place setter because it was a remote location. And so I found myself going to people above me and having to defend what he was doing, what he was contributing, because nobody spent the time to actually go out and learn who this guy was and what he was capable of doing. And that's not, that was an activity that a lot of the people told me, look, don't ruffle any feathers, he's got a job, let him sit there.
But that's not the way to manage.
No, you can't manage that way. The same thing is with conflict. You have people on your team that aren't getting along, and they're butting heads on a regular basis. You got to be willing to jump into that and settle that score. Otherwise, it's going to work its way to HR.
Well, not only that, it brings down all the people around who are close to that situation.
Right.
So instead of having 2 people going at it, you've got 10 or 12 by the time somebody puts a stop to it.
And the people that are in the spectator stands just kind of watching what this goes on, at some point the responsibility for resolution goes from the 2 people who started it to the person that's leading the group.
That's right. Watch TV if you want examples of that.
Right.
Okay, what's number 5?
Number 5 is be willing to give and accept feedback.
Wow. I don't know how many people have the courage for this, but it is good advice.
Yes, absolutely. It's one thing to give good quality feedback that makes somebody else feel good about the fact that they now understand how they can improve what they're doing, but it's the real solid, confident manager that willingly asks for feedback and is willing to sit there and listen to it.
All right, I like it. So let's summarize these real quick. Be in the know about related areas of the company. Number 2, know how to access resources and bring them to the team. Number 3, be willing and able to make decisions. 4, have the courage to address tough situations. Don't shy away from it. And then 5, be willing to give and accept feedback, which I think is probably one of the more important ones.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that makes or breaks a good manager is how influential you are with the team you're overseeing and how much value you contribute as a team, as the head of the team, to the people that you're working for. The one means that you've got people that are going to be loyal to you, and even if they don't like what you're asking them to do in the moment, they will do it. The other one means at some point you're going to get promoted. People have to know you well enough and respect you well enough to be able to do things they don't necessarily like to do, and do it because they understand it's important to the team, the company, and to you. So if you know somebody who is struggling as a manager, have them listen to this episode because it will really open their eyes to things that they should be doing that they may not be doing. Now, when you go to our page with this episode, we also provide a lot of resources, other articles that we found in the process of putting this episode together that were written by some really sage folks. Take advantage of those because it can only enlighten what you're trying to accomplish in your current role. All right, take care, folks.